And now it's time for our wonderful speaker, Mary Cenci.
Thank you. Is the sound up? Can you hear me, everyone? It's awesome that the songs that Devison sang in your meditation was all about freedom, which is the title of my talk this morning. So thank you all for being here. And this title that I gave it this morning is called On the Road to Freedom, which I think Cat Stevens already knew a little bit about. In the dictionary, in Webster's dictionary, freedom, the definition says, the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants, without hindrance or restraint. Now, not everyone in this world is free, appears to be free. There are those that are imprisoned. There are those that appear to be limited due to lack, and those people who feel dependent on chemical substances. None of these people appear to be free. And we enjoy many, many freedoms in this country. One you're experiencing right now is the freedom to worship as you choose. Right here in this place. And in this place here, this is the freedom that we're taking part in, is learning about this God within. But what if we had all of our rights and freedoms taken away from us? What would we have left? We would have a freedom of belief. And wherever we find ourselves, we are always free to think and believe as we choose. So this is much bigger than the Webster's definition. The interesting thing is we ask ourselves, why do we keep searching for this true inner freedom outside of ourselves? Jesus was recorded as saying, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." So, where is that truth? What is that truth that we keep searching for? To me, this means our ultimate freedom lies in our union with the God within. This Christ presence gives us the power to overcome negativity, to rise above seemingly impossible situations, and to remain positive when everything around us appears to be falling apart. This truth of this God within, this Christ within, means that no one or no thing can limit or have control over our thoughts. Excuse me. A book that was very instrumental early in my life to describe this truth was called Man's Search for Meaning, many years ago, written by a man named Viktor Frankl. He was an Austrian psychologist who was a prisoner and survived the Holocaust and was a prisoner for many years in concentration camps. And his book is about how he knew that no matter what was done to him, no matter what was taken away from him, no matter what he witnessed and experienced, no one could tell him how to think. He described this in this statement. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. And that is how he survived in that horrible experience, because he determined himself and he knew he had the power of what he wanted to think in every moment. Some people think freedom is material wealth, financial security, lots of other things. This can limit us. This is all wonderful, but this can limit us sometimes spiritually. And because true freedom to means living from the inside outwards instead of outwards in. So what does that mean? Charles Fillmore, our founder of Unity, said, freedom is having a sense of complete well-being. In this sense of well-being are all the attributes of freedom: wisdom, peace, joy, wholeness. Everything else in the outside world is material and has limits. We can lose it, we can come and go, but these attributes within us are unlimited. You are already free. This is the way you were created, with freedom of mind. When you let go of thinking, limiting and binding thoughts, you find conditions, people, and circumstances no longer have power over you. Each day we can find ourselves on many different roads to freedom. We search for freedom everywhere. We buy things that represent freedom to us. Cars, vehicles. We take trips. We do all sorts of things to allow us to think we're feeling free based on what's in our outside world. I remember as a teenager when I got my first driver's license in my car. Oh, wow. I felt free. But what did that mean to me then? That meant to me then that I was free to make my own choices and decisions because I was in the car by myself. I could go wherever I wanted to. For a limited amount of time, of course. But while we're traveling during our lives in the search for freedom, it's like we can see our lives reflected in our outside world. I always like to see things in our lives as metaphors. So in our lifetime, as we travel through our life, looking and seeing how it reflects, our outer world reflects, you could be on a super highway. Your life could feel like that, or being on a bumpy dirt road, or a winding country road. And to some people, that would even feel good, and some other people could get car sick. Sometimes when we travel through these roads in our life, what do? We complain about the traffic. All these other people. Or the road conditions. Why is this happening to me? Why isn't this working out for me? And what do? Really like to complain about all the other drivers. So as in life, we can get confused. We can lose our way. We can have to take unexpected detours. So how is this journey in our outer world any different than what we see and project into our lives? Get in your car, it could be this very same thing. So what usually happens on our search is that we feel stuck. And we keep driving down the same old roads. When we have a negative thought, to me it's like driving a car. This negative thought pushes on the gas of judging, blaming, criticizing, complaining. Then we follow these thoughts, to a dead end? Or we can put on the brakes. If you choose not to put on the brakes and not change direction, you'll most likely crash into someone or something. This is a description of conflict, not freedom. Well, when we remember that we can put on the brakes before our car stalls or crashes, we can change our direction. Just like on our GPS. Before we lose our way, we can listen to our guidance within that says what? Recalculating, rerouting. Maybe we should choose a different direction. We have a choice to let go of the past that fuels the engine of our thoughts. One of my favorite shows many years ago was the Bob Newhart Show. He had this television clip where he played the psychiatrist, and this woman comes into his office for counseling, and Bob tells her, this consultation will be $5. She said, $5? Why $5? He said, well, I charge $5 a minute. This actually is only going to this is only going to take 3 minutes, but I don't give change. So she gives him the money, and he says, well, how can I help you? And she says, well, I'm afraid of being buried alive in a box. So he says, stop that. She says, what do you mean? I should just stop thinking about that? He said, yes, stop it. So she's very bewildered, and she sits back, and he goes, okay, you have another few minutes. And she says, well, I have another problem. I let men take advantage of me. Then Bob says, well, stop it. So it was really funny, but it has a lot of bearing on what we're talking about today. We think correction of problems in our lives are not always, and circumstances are not always that instantaneous or simple. That's just our thoughts. However, this principle remains the same. Bob is really saying you can put on the brakes. You can. Who else is going to do it but you? You can put on the brakes. You can start thinking differently. Not until we realize we have a choice to stop thinking in the past and that we can think with God, with this Christ within, that we can make the decision to do that. Only because we haven't really been taught to do this, we think it's difficult. But as soon as you're taught something and you practice it, what happens? It becomes more comfortable, and then until it becomes a habit. In the text of A Course in Miracles, it talks about recognizing when we have made a choice based in our ego minds. When we pay attention and realize that we've made that choice, then we can what? Stop it. We can forgive ourselves, and then we can choose to see things differently. It's just a different way of learning and letting go of our old past way of thinking. In this sense, we could say freedom is just another word for knowing there is nothing to lose. There is nothing we could truly lose. We are so attached to perceiving the world the way we want to see it. Even though our perceptions are completely subjective, each person is going to see everything completely different through their eyes. But we remember what we want to remember, because we want our stories to reign supreme and be the top story. We are so persistently engaged in projecting out to the world of what we want and what we believe that we want to see in others that we don't realize that we are making all of this up as an interpretation of the world we see. And who's the image maker? We're the image maker. We're the ones that are making up the story and interpreting it the way we want to see it. So this ends up confusing us on our journey because we don't recognize that we have no neutral thoughts. We just think about that for a second. We have no neutral thoughts. All our thoughts are coming from either love, guilt, or fear. If you boil them all down. Why do we do this? This purpose of projection is to rid our minds of guilt. Guilt always stands in our way of remembering God. Even when we were very small and we just told a little white lie, some part of us didn't feel quite right about it. It doesn't mean that the guilt is a very conscious idea, but it stands in our way of remembering, and guilt keeps us stranded in the past. When we believe we feel guilty, then we believe we are separated from God. And our spirit, the spiritual source within that we keep talking about over and over, and unity that's omnipresent, that is omnipotent, that is here, everywhere, in all things and all people. Guilt always follows anger, because in our anger, we typically what? We act out our anger. Our ego thinking is so distorted that we find it impossible to believe that anyone could actually be firm, calm, and speak with conviction while not being angry. There were these two priests. They were journeying to another town. Along their journey, they came to a river. They said, well, I've got to cross the river here. But as they looked on the bank right before they stepped into the river, there was a woman there. And she approached one of the priests and said, Father, could you please help me cross the river? I'm not strong enough to do this by myself. And he said, sure. She got on his back, and both priests walked through the river and carried this woman on his back, and he went on to the other side. When he got to the other side, he put her down on the bank, and they continued on their journey. A little while later, the other priest, who did not help this woman, said, I can't believe you did that. You know that we have taken a vow never to touch a woman. How could you have done that? And he looked at him and said, I left the woman by the bank. You're still carrying her. So, this priest was angry and wanted the other priest to feel guilt for what he had done. What he let him know was that he was already stranded in the past, carrying this invisible woman. Sometimes we take on this guilt and hurt and we want to escape it. We want to blame someone for it. And what do? We keep turning our heads backwards because where is the past? It's behind us. So we keep turning our heads backwards to the past. This freedom that we're searching for is not found in the past. So how do we find it? I think there are always, using the metaphor again of the car, I think there's always road signs around us and road signs ahead, pointing us in the direction of freedom. Unless we want to ignore them, that's fine. Sometimes these signs can be seen as metaphors for things in our lives. We see signs that say caution, stop, children crossing, yield, merging lanes. All of this is things like we do in our lives. And they're all representatives that show us how to harness this inner driver, this one that is searching for freedom on the road all the time, and be grateful for all these other drivers. Sometimes these road signs are disguised as family members, friends, those you just met briefly, All these signs have value and are pointing us back inward. You may even remember a time where you heard your intuition loudly giving you a sign, and you decided to ignore it. All of these are messengers that say for us to take our time and look at our inner and outer landscape as we're going on this journey. There was another, a student and a spiritual master, and they were sitting in a garden. And the student said to the master, "Master, how can I get over my terrible temper?" The master said, "Well, show it to me." Student explained, "Well, I can't just show it to you just like that. It comes on unexpectedly." The master replied, "Then it can't be your true nature, because if it were, then it would be with you all the time." This student is describing the part of himself that is operating from the past. His anger only comes up at certain times, unexpectedly. He wants to be free, however, when his thoughts get triggered from the past, then he gets angry. If his true nature is free, then it's the joyful God presence that's within him and all of us. Even though the past is dead and gone, what do? We try to blow air into it in attempts to resuscitate it. We want to hold on to our suffering and blaming to justify our stance. I like to call this doing CPR on the past. We're sitting there, come on, stay with me. You can be here. I don't want to let you go. Stay. And in that, it doesn't work out. If that doesn't work out and we're trying, come on, I don't want you to go, come on. And we're doing the CPR, wanting the past to stay with us. And if that doesn't work, what do? We call in friends to help us, to keep us, that past alive. Paddles, boom. I know our friends can give us those paddles too. Clara Barton was one of the women who first organized the Red Cross in the early 1900s. She had a friend she worked with. One day, her friend recalled to Clara this terrible story about something that had been done that was really horrible to her, that had happened to her. But Clara seemed not to remember the incident when her friend was telling her, "Don't you remember?" And her friend said, "Don't you remember this wrong that was done to you, Clara? How could you have forgotten it? It was so, I remember it." And Clara said, "No. I remember forgetting it. That's all I remember." So true freedom means we can stop holding the past hostage and choose to define our world in a positive way. Each day you find yourself in this bodily vehicle, traveling down the road. The power of decision is our only true freedom. But how motivated are we to recognize this internal power that we have on this road to freedom? There were these two frogs, and there's one frog. There's one frog, and he was hopping down the road. He's hopping down the road. Next thing you know, he's in this big, deep pothole. He hops, and he tries to get out of this pothole, and he can't get out. So his friends come along and cheer him on. "Come on, you can do it. Hop harder. You can get out of this hole. Hop harder." He tries and he tries. I just can't do it. I'm trying as hard as I can. Eventually, his frog friends give up. They go back to the pond. So they're all sitting around the pond. The next thing they know, they look up in surprise, and there he is, sitting on a rock across the other side of the pond. And they say, "What happened? We thought you couldn't get out of the pothole." He said, "I know, I couldn't. Then I saw the truck coming." So often we wait until circumstances are too unbearable before we decide to change. We don't have to wait for the truck to be bearing down on us. We can learn a new habit. We can begin to see the world in a new way of thinking. So once a year, people from around the world celebrate Halloween. We put on costumes ranging from ghouls to heroes, whatever we want to dress up as. But every second of the day, we wear a mask. These masks that we wear have a far greater diversity and meaning than the ones we wear on Halloween or may see. We can play the CEO or the disgruntled employee. We can play the police officer or the thief. We can play the Christian or the atheist. Whatever we would like to play, we can put on this mask and play it. These are all defined as masks because this is not who we truly are or who anyone else is. Everything but our Christ self is a false and temporary mask. That's who we are. These masks could also be known as ego coping mechanisms. These are just things that we've learned, so that we tell stories about, until one day we can decide to trade in our masks for our real identity, which is this Christ within. We are all humans, but we are not mere humans. Because we have the power to create. We have the power to judge. We have the power to condemn. We have the power also to support and love. At any moment, we don't have to tell and retell our stories of the past to others. Boom. And we can tell our new stories of our dreams, our wishes, and our freedoms. And then we can say, I am not bound by the story of me. I am not bound by this story. So on your road to freedom, I would suggest you only look backwards to see how much baggage from the past that you may be carrying with you. Some of us are pulling big steamer trunks or huge suitcases that are stuffed to the brim. Those heavy suitcases will cost you extra. And if you notice this, then you can choose what to let go of that no longer serves you. You can shrink your bags down so that they are more comfortable size. Maybe ones that fit in the overhead bin or under your seat. This God force is already liberating and everlastingly free within us. It just lies in wait for you to see it and welcome it. We can be determined to replace fear with love, to replace loss with abundance, and to replace tears with laughter. And we can do this gently, forgiving ourselves along the way. So what will you do with this moment? My wish for you is that today you are recognized with this ever-expanding sense of your unlimited freedom by shifting your focus to the presence of the God within. There is a beautiful brief selection from a writing called The Gifts of God that refers to this Christ within. There is a silence where you speak to me and give me words of love to say for you, to those you send to me. And I am blessed because in them I see you shining through. This is not only possible as we interact with others, this is the truth of who you are and cannot be otherwise. And when we practice this, we become a living example. A living example. So, forget yesterday. It's already forgotten you. Release tomorrow. You haven't even met yet. And because your true spiritual freedom is waiting for you right here and now. Thank you so much.